Hello, my name is Judith Bryans, and I'd like to welcome you all to IDF celebrations of International School Meals Day. The champions behind International School Meals Day are the Scottish Government, so I'm delighted to have a special guest with me today who's going to share his thoughts on the importance of feeding programmes for children. The aim of the day is really to raise awareness for children all over the world that regardless of their circumstances, good nutrition is tremendously important. So my guest today is Philip Canavan, and Philip is the team leader at Scottish Government for the Milk and Healthy Snacks scheme. So welcome, Philip.
Thank you. Thank you much for having me.
So let's dive in with our first question to Philip. Can you tell us a little bit about the Milk and Healthy Snacks scheme and its role and importance to children?
Absolutely, yes. So the Scottish Milk and Healthy Snacks scheme has been developed as a result of the Welfare Foods consultation that was held in Scotland here back in September 2018. The consultation essentially asked a few questions around delivery of milk, particularly to not only just schools, but also to our preschool settings, so the likes of your nurseries and any early learning childcare settings as well. In Scotland, there's a slightly different system to the rest of the United Kingdom in that our local authorities here are actually responsible for delivering a lot of funding to the likes of our early learning childcare settings. What we wanted to try and do was to develop a system that was more streamlined and aligned with the current practices in place. What we've developed is essentially a replacement for the UK nursery milk scheme that also delivers funding to settings for the purchase of milk throughout the whole of the United Kingdom. But we've used this as an opportunity as a result of the devolved powers that we have now in Scotland. Use this as an opportunity to basically improve on the existing scheme and the offer that we have that we can make to children. So what the current scheme is offering, I should say that the plan is for in Scotland to be implemented from the 1st of August 2021. So it's been quite a challenging experience trying to roll this out through the middle of a pandemic, but we've managed to get there at the end. So our local authorities are in the middle of kind of setting up their systems and developing their processes for rolling this out from the 1st of August 2021. The scheme itself, what it offers is obviously there's the big emphasis on cow's milk as the main benefit of the scheme, purely because of the beneficial of the nutritional benefits that it has. The other options that we've now added are goat's milk and sheep's milk. We've also added on another angle of it's a non-dairy alternative, and the reasons why we're adding on those additional benefits is for an equalities perspective. This is actually for those children who can't necessarily consume cow's milk or any other forms of dairy milk for medical, ethical, or religious reasons. So that's for kind of a bit more inclusive than the current scheme. The scheme also offers the addition of a healthy snack, that being defined as a portion of fruit or vegetables. Now I have to be quite clear on that because sometimes snack can be sometimes misinterpreted as a packet of crisps or chocolate or something. So we want to be quite clear in our definition and our guidance what that actual healthy snack means. So what we've developed in conjunction with COSLA, who are kind of overarching body for local authorities in Scotland, and Food Standards Scotland, who have fed into quite a bit of the development work around what can be classified and what can be included within the scheme. I suppose I should go into the detail around how the actual processing of the scheme shall work. I suppose what we can chat about is the development of the costing association that's been budgeted for this. What we've done is looked at existing data, existing costs of claims that have been made from the current UK scheme, which has fed quite a lot into our costs and calculations. What we've also developed is the costings based on intel and information that we've got from local authorities in Scotland. So obviously Scotland has quite a range of different areas, some quite urban, some quite rural. So kind of further north you go, the more expensive these things can become. So we have to be quite representative and reflective of locality and rurality in Scotland. So we've taken into account those those variations as well when we're developing our calculations. We've also essentially flipped the current model of the UK nursery milk scheme on its edge. What I mean by that is how it currently works is this claims reimbursement model. So basically, settings will currently, at the moment, will purchase milk. They'll then have to submit their proof of purchases, so the receipts and invoices, to this nursery milk reimbursement unit, which is also set up through the Department of Health and Social Care in England. So essentially they get funded, but they're getting paid in arrears, is the process. So there's a little bit of administration that's required. And what our aim to use that as an opportunity for this new scheme that we're developing in Scotland is to try and reduce the administration as much as we possibly can. Primarily, one, because we think it's a little bit too bureaucratic, but also to create more of an incentive for more settings to get involved in the scheme and actually to participate. And I think one of the admin, the level of administration that's required right now is actually deters them from actually getting involved. So, and as we know, a lot of nursery managers and childcare settings have a lot on their plates already to do with. So if we can try and reduce their workload as much as we can, that's another great benefit that we can hopefully bring to the table. So what we've done now is develop this system where the claims reimbursement model will cease to exist from the 1st of August 2021, and local authorities will now actually pay settings upfront. So essentially they'll get the funding in advance of purchasing milk, or the healthy snack in this case as well. And that's based on certain factors. So, one being the number of children that are enrolled in settings, the cost per portion of milk, cost per portion of snack and vegetables, a number of servings that the settings would normally need to be delivered or to roll out in their setting for the children in their setting for the full year. So there's quite a few variations that we've come into that. So some of them are still being discussed as we speak, and I think it's quite good, and it quite shows the intricacies of what we might think is a simple process of getting money to someone's bank account to buy for milk. It's not just as straightforward as that. So there's a few things that we need to clarify, but I think the main objective to remember in all of this is not just for processing and the operational side of it, but the main benefit and the main aim and objective of this scheme is primarily improve the health and well-being of our children in Scotland, and it's also to make sure that they've all got accessibility to the right nutritional benefits as much as possible. And I think that sometimes we need to really kind of pinch ourselves a little bit and think, that is the main aim and objective, which can sometimes get lost in the midst of all of the bigger conversations. So that's just a brief overview, essentially, of what the scheme's hoping and planning to develop and planning to achieve and deliver from, as I said, from August this year.
That's a fantastic overview, and it's great to see it come into being. And I think you're spot on. The health of the kids is so important, but the fact that you are making it practical and easy to use will also mean that I'm sure in the end you'll have far more success. Now, with that scheme coming into being, I know you already have other ways in Scotland that you support child feeding through school milk schemes. So could you tell us a bit about how ScotGov supports those schemes?
Yeah, so as you're probably aware, the EU school milk scheme obviously has planned to stop its delivery here as of summer this year. So what we've had to try and do is somewhat replace that with a bit of a scheme or some form of funding to make sure that the measures and the objectives of that scheme are upheld. Basically, that we've still got enough funding going into the sector to make sure children have got this milk. Now, what we've in Scotland, because that scheme is now essentially is going to be superseded, there's no official school milk scheme, as it were, as at a national level. But what there is, at a local authority level, each local authority will have their own kind of school fund and school milk fund for schools in their local area. What the Scottish Government has pledged is almost £1 million a year, essentially, on an annual basis, to be put, basically pushed into that system, and to make sure that those school settings have the budget to make sure to provide the milk for the children in their schools. There's a little bit of a crossover because I think some schools actually have preschool settings as well, so have like a nursery or whatever attached. So there's going to be a bit of clear clarification that's going to be needed in terms of the break of the Scottish Milk and Healthy Snack Scheme, and then what the funding comes from for school milk, so an educational setting or a health setting. So I think there's going to be two different elements of that, which I think a lot of schools are alive to. And I think, the fact that the Scottish Government continues to commit to funding this element is obviously welcomed widely across the sector, not just from, the early range childcare settings or parents, but also from the dairy industry itself. It's obviously, without them, this wouldn't physically be possible. So I think they're a massive player, and we're giving credit where credit's due. I think they've tried to be as cooperative and supportive as possible, and they see the real benefit of what we're trying to do here. I think there's potential plans for something to be replaced in the long run. I can't give any comment on that at the moment, but I think once we have a bit more robust conversations and a bit more planning, that will be shared momentarily. But I think there's a lot of, it's not just a simple click of the finger to say, oh, we can just replace something. There's a lot of planning, development work, but you can guarantee that the Scottish Government will remain committed to doing something and to make sure that school milk is definitely part of that, part of the bigger, wider health and wellbeing remit. I suppose the other one that we could mention is the early learning childcare provisions, so the ELC provisions, which run out your free meals. Milk's obviously a part of that, and what we've incorporated is through part of our setting the table guidance, which is quite a useful document for referencing these like these conversations, and also for other people, other parts of government and parts of the country to look at. And I think it's a fair point to say Scottish Government are kind of somewhat ahead of the game in some of these aspects, and I think they're definitely areas where we can improve on, and I think we can learn from other governments and other parties as well. But I think that there's quite a bit to offer from our side as well, and obviously anything that we can do to help support anyone or any child across the country or the world even will be blessed for us if that's the case.
I mean, I think it's great to hear about all of that, and the dairy sector is definitely committed to school milk programs. Many of the member countries of the IDF have school milk programs, and very long-standing school milk programs. So, as an industry, we're certainly committed and to childhood nutrition and improving childhood nutrition. I suppose for those countries who perhaps don't have a school milk program or a school meals program, in what you've been doing to set up your scheme or in other schemes available in Scotland, are there any learnings, insights that you could give to a government who's thinking, well, we don't have a school milk scheme, but we'd like to help improve the nutritional quality of our children, so we're thinking of putting one in place?
Yeah, I think there's quite a bit of things to learn from the process. I think one would probably be, I suppose, the delivery mechanism of what a government may choose to do. So, I think there's this element whether, sometimes if money and funding can go to local authorities or local councils or whatever, but sometimes may not necessarily follow the child in completion. And I think there's this element of how much authority and control the government will want to have over that. I think, is there an appetite for it? Is it something that people will want to get involved in? And obviously, the funding and the budgets because this is essentially a demand-led fund and budget. It's sometimes kind of difficult to be able to kind of forecast spend, especially at this point with our new scheme. This is the first year that we're setting this up, so we're basing this on pre-existing data that we know that we've got. But I think it's to make sure that there's enough information at the beginning to be able to identify if there's a need for the scheme. Obviously, I think it's a fantastic thing to do, that we can actually be able to fund this and to be able to bring the benefit to as many children as possible. But I think in especially bigger countries where there's maybe, population-wise, there's a bigger population of children or whatever the case may be, I think it's budget and funding always comes down as the bottom line, I think, for most things and most new policies. I think if depending on the setup in a different country, I think there needs to be the political appetite for it as well, that the ministers and cabinet secretaries or whatever the term in different countries would be, that they see the real benefit of this, and obviously they want to commit to this and make sure that the commitment is made not just on an annual basis but on a lifelong term basis. And I think what we've done to try and solidify that in Scotland is by introducing our legislation So we've got our milk and healthy snack regulations that were actually laid in Parliament on the 19th of February this year, which means that there's no move around. Essentially, they're there to stay, and that means that this scheme will be in place until the end of time, essentially, is what we want to do. So that's, I suppose that, there's certain elements of that which governments could probably take on, and if there is the real commitment and appetite for it, to use legislation just to secure that commitment and make sure that, no matter how many elections or new administrations come in, that commitment still is upheld. So I think that would be a key bit of advice to make sure it's to fulfill their commitments there.
I think that's a fantastic point, because there has to be longevity. If you want to actually help children improve their quality of nutrition and their growth and development, then it's not just a one-shot scheme. It's something that has a long-term benefit to children. And I think the programs that you've talked about there, the programs that are already existing around the world, they are definitely a lifeline to children, particularly vulnerable children, in normal times. And at the moment, we're still in the midst of a pandemic, and they have proven even more important. So within IDF, we have long been collecting information on school milk schemes. We've just completed a big survey on school milk schemes, as well as our literature review, which goes back with data for a number of decades showing the nutritional benefits. And that is available for people to just get a free copy of. But one exciting thing that the IDF is it's going to launch a school milk knowledge hub. And that will be an interactive hub where people can go online and they can really learn some important facts about school milk schemes, with case studies, with a lot of data and a lot of resources that will assist anybody who wants to set a school milk scheme up. So that will be available shortly, and I'd encourage anybody who's watching or listening to this today to definitely keep in touch with IDF on all of its channels, so that they see when that goes live and they can access it. And certainly it will be an invaluable resource even for anybody who wants to learn about the background to school milk schemes and what they can do worldwide. So with that, I know you are a busy man, and I want to thank you very much for coming on and sharing your thoughts with us today, Philip. And we'll let you know when that hub goes live, and hopefully you can have a look and give us your thoughts on that too. So thanks very much.
Great stuff. Thanks so much for having me. It's been great. Thank you.